The lake shimmered like a secret promise beneath the morning sun, a liquid canvas painted in hues of tranquility and solace. It had always been my sanctuary, my retreat from the world's relentless chatter. Its silent embrace was a refuge, offering calm to my restless thoughts. But the Homeowners Association, personified by Karen's relentless need for control, had other ideas. Karen, the name alone was enough to conjure visions of clipped words and pointed fingers. A woman who wielded regulation booklets like sacred texts. Her latest decree was a towering fence, a monstrosity of cold steel that encircled the lake, meant to delineate property lines and enforce exclusivity. I watched it rise against the sky, a defiant monument to her pettiness. The fence was her latest ploy, a declaration of ownership over a lake that had existed long before suburbia crept into its embrace. She had convinced the HOA that it was a necessary measure to protect community assets, another layer of barriers in a world already full of them. Yet, I took it in stride. I preferred to let the waters of patience wash over me, wearing down obstacles as the lake does to stone. There was a rhythm to it, an understanding that time had a way of righting wrongs. My lake was patient too. And together, we waited. Karen's presence was as persistent as a mosquito, her petty actions buzzing incessantly in the background. Unsanctioned flowers in my garden were a nuisance. The color of my mailbox was unapproved. Each complaint was a gentle ripple, easily absorbed by the vastness of my calm. On a particularly bright afternoon, I found a note tucked into my doorframe. It was from Karen. Of course, a missive demanding compliance with some new arbitrary rule. I read it slowly, allowing each word to dissolve into the quiet around me. The lake, indifferent and eternal, glistened in the distance, a reminder of things greater than bureaucracy. I kept my peace, choosing quiet acts of defiance. I painted my fence post in hues of rebellion colors that sang of sunsets and dreams, small gestures, but meaningful to me. The lake approved, its surface rippling in silent applause. Still, I was aware that Karen watched, her eyes narrowing from behind curtained windows. She thrived on conflict, yet I denied her the satisfaction. My refusal to engage left her powerless, a general without a war. But change was creeping, like the first blush of dawn on the horizon. I learned, through the grapevine of neighborhood whispers, that the fence had a key, a singular, tangible symbol of control. It was supposed to be a secret, a privilege reserved for those in Karen's inner circle. The irony was delicious. A fence meant to exclude could so easily become inclusive. All it needed was the right key. I was not one for rash actions. My approach was measured, considered. The path of least resistance often led to the most satisfying outcomes. So, I waited, watching Karen parade around with the confidence of a monarch. Her reign was assured, yet cracks were appearing beneath the surface. And then, as if by providence, the opportunity presented itself. An old friend, one with access and keys to all the right places, offered a solution. It was almost too perfect. This chance to reclaim my sanctuary with a turn of metal and the soft click of inevitability. The lake waited too, its surface smooth and patient, a mirror reflecting the sky's endless possibility. It knew what I knew, that some fences were not meant to keep out, but to be unlocked, opening paths to freedom beyond. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the lake in bruised purples and fiery reds. I stood at the edge of my property, surveying the scene where nature's tranquility clashed with man-made absurdity. The new fence stood arrogantly tall, a metallic blight meant to keep me from what was rightfully mine, or so Karen and her band of rulemakers believed. The fence was a symbol, an ugly one, their latest weapon in a campaign that had grown more audacious with each passing day. It started innocuously enough, petty fines for imaginary infractions, a weed here, a bicycle left out there. But Karen, queen of the Homeowners Association, was nothing if not persistent, like a wasp. Her sting was precise, her tactics relentless. I first realized the scale of her machinations when I received an official citation for excessive foliage. My garden, my pride and joy, had been deemed unruly, a stark contrast to the monotony of perfectly trimmed hedges in the neighborhood. I liked my garden a bit wild. Nature doesn't conform, after all. But Karen saw chaos where I saw beauty. The letters piled up, each more ludicrous than the last. Non-regulation mailbox because it was blue and not the standard gray. Improper use of holiday lights. I had left them up a week past New Year's. Karen had an eye for details that didn't matter, and she wielded her position like a knight wields a sword. Yet, it was more than just rules. She orchestrated whispers, turning neighbors into unwitting accomplices, at book club meetings, over backyard fences, in the quiet conspiracies of community potlucks. She spread her tales. I was the difficult one, the non-conformist, the threat to our peaceful enclave. Her words were seeds of doubt, sprouting suspicion. But actions, no matter how small, have a way of revealing truths. One evening, during one of those interminable HOA meetings that tested patience and cramped knees, Karen proposed a new regulation, a fence around the community lake. She spun tales of safety and security. But her eyes flicked toward me every time she spoke of outsiders and intruders. The vote passed, a unanimous decision made in whispers and sidelong glances. The fence was erected within weeks, encircling the lake like a crown of thorns. They thought they had won, that I would relent, surrender. They underestimated me. I held the key now, a simple piece of metal, yet weighty with significance. I had bought it legally, though not through the usual channels. Funny how quickly loyalties shift when words like charitable donation are mentioned. Karen could have her fence. I had my access. The irony was almost sweet, to be fenced out, yet possess the means to step through at will. I wouldn't flaunt it. That wasn't my style, but the knowledge of it, the quiet power of it, was enough. Karen's rules might have carved their initials into paper, but the lake that was carved by time, by nature, untouched by human folly, it would endure, as would I, long after her fences rusted and her rules faded from memory. Tomorrow, I'd walk through the gate. I'd feel the cool water lap against my skin, a silent testament to perseverance. And Karen, with all her fences and whispers, would watch, powerless. In the end, nature always finds a way. The morning sun shimmered on the lake, its surface a silvery canvas brushed by the gentle hand of dawn. I stood at the edge, the cool air crisp with the scent of pine and earth. This lake had always been a sanctuary, a refuge from the tangled complexities of suburban life. But the fence, a stark symbol of division, marred its beauty, casting long shadows over the water. I had spent countless nights documenting every letter, every passive-aggressive note from the HOA. Their words were neatly catalogued, each one a testament to pettiness dressed as propriety. Ironic. How paper intended to confine was now my tool for liberation. The fence loomed tall, its metal bars a cold reminder of bureaucracy's reach. Yet, in my pocket rested the key, a small, unassuming object with the power to unlock not just gates, but freedom. I had acquired it quietly, a transaction as unremarkable as the key itself. From a locksmith who understood too well the constraints of control, with a subtle click, the lock surrendered. The gate swung open with a groan, protesting its own irrelevance. I paused, listening for the whisper of guilt or doubt, but there was only silence and the gentle lapping of water against the shore. I crossed the threshold, each step a defiance against those who sought to cage what was never theirs. The fence now stood behind me, its authority rendered impotent. Here, I was king of my own domain, architect of my destiny. The HOA had always underestimated me, mistaking quiet for compliance. solitude for submission. They could never grasp the simple truth that power lies not in control, but in understanding, and I understood them all too well. I documented this moment, not with pen and paper, but with the permanence of memory, the way the light danced on the water, the sound of leaves rustling in the trees. These were the details that mattered, the essence of what they could never take. As I turned back to the house, a figure appeared, Karen, the self-appointed guardian of neighborhood decorum. Her expression was a portrait of disbelief, eyes wide with outrage, but I met her gaze with calm resolve, a quiet acknowledgement of the battle fought and won. Words were unnecessary. She understood, as did I, that the tide had shifted, the lake remained mine, as did the knowledge that sometimes the greatest victories are those achieved without a single word spoken. Walking away, I felt the weight of the key in my pocket, a reminder that barriers are often more fragile than they appear. The lake stretched out before me, vast and free, a reflection of the boundless possibilities that come when one dares to claim their rightful place in the world. The sun hung low, casting long shadows from the ominous fence that had appeared almost overnight. The barrier was a stark reminder of the lengths people would go to claim what they thought was theirs, a rigid structure of aluminum and misguided authority. Yet, there was a key, my key, the key that turned their arrogance into my silent victory. Neighbors started to notice. The fence had been a whispered scandal, a quiet rustling of disbelief and indignation that rippled through our little enclave. It was as if the HOA believed they could rearrange the stars to suit their constellations. But the lake was mine, in heart and in deed. The water lapped at its shores, unaware of human pettiness, unworried by boundaries set by mere mortals. I walked down to the lake every morning, the key dangling from my fingertips like a talisman. The gate's lock was a small creature, easily tamed. The creak of the hinges announced my presence, a sound that seemed to echo through the trees, alerting the nosy and the indifferent alike. Each time, it was an unspoken declaration that no fence would dictate where my feet could tread. Murmurs grew louder with each passing day. I felt the eyes of neighbors as they peeked through curtains or pretended to tend to their gardens. Some looked away quickly, guilt or perhaps envy in their averted gaze. Others watched with open curiosity, their minds concocting stories, theories, and alliances. The atmosphere thickened with the scent of tension and the sweet decay of fallen leaves. It was the season of change, a time when nature shed what was no longer needed. How fitting it seemed. As the neighborhood began to shed its illusions of control over something as timeless and unyielding as the lake. One afternoon, I paused at the gate longer than usual. The air was electric, charged by the unseen but deeply felt presence of watching eyes. It was the moment before the storm, when the world holds its breath, waiting for the first drop of rain or the flash of lightning. I could feel it in my bones. A nearby bird chirped, breaking the silence with its defiant song. I turned slowly, meeting the gaze of Mr. Langley from 2 houses down. He stood there, his hands buried in the pockets of his worn jacket, his expression caught between curiosity and something resembling admiration. Our eyes locked, and in that instant, a silent understanding passed between us. It was time someone challenged the invisible chains that the HOA wrapped around our lives. The leaves crunched beneath my feet as I continued my solitary march towards the water. The lake greeted me with its tranquil surface, a mirror reflecting the unpredictable sky. As I stepped onto the small dock, the world behind me seemed to fade away, leaving only the gentle lap of water and the whispers of the wind. I wondered how long this delicate balance would hold, how long before the HOA made their next move, or if they had any move left at all. The key in my pocket felt heavy, a symbol of quiet defiance. I wondered if the neighbors would find their own keys not to the gate, but to their voices. For now, the lake was mine once more, and the fence, just another boundary waiting to be ignored. The morning chill swept across the lake, its surface undisturbed, mirroring the sky's steely gray. I stood at the edge, feeling the weight of the recent changes in the air. The fence, that glaring reminder of the HOA's audacity, loomed in the periphery like an unwanted sentinel. It sliced through the landscape, an iron lattice standing between me and what was rightfully mine, or so they had thought. The key rested in my pocket, heavy, yet reassuring. It was more than just a piece of metal. It was a symbol of the quiet yet decisive steps I had taken. One meticulous checkbox at a time. Each move had been calculated. A strategic unfolding of plans drawn from the depths of my resolve. I had learned patience from the lake, its subtle rhythms teaching me to navigate the waters of legalese and bureaucracy with a quiet determination. I had never been one for conflict, but this was different. This was personal. The HOA's presumption that they could annex what wasn't theirs, what was never theirs, had stirred something in me from the depths, a quiet storm, gathering strength, waiting for the right moment to release its power. The lawyer, recommended by a friend who understood my silent resolve, had been a godsend, a professional in every sense. They had guided me through the maze of legal options. Each document signed, each piece of evidence submitted, was a step closer to reclaiming what had been taken. It was as though I was assembling an intricate puzzle, each piece fitting seamlessly into the next. I thought back to the meetings, the sterile room filled with people who had underestimated me. They had sat there, eyes glazed over with a veneer of civility, while beneath lay a current of condescension. They were sure I would crumble under their pressure, that I would retreat, quietly, into submission. It was almost laughable how little they knew me. As the lake whispered its secrets to the wind, I remembered the turning point. The irony of it all was delicious, the moment when their own bylaws, those rigid articles meant to control, had become their undoing. It was in those very documents that I found the loophole, the thread I could pull to unravel their plans. The HOA had fenced themselves into a corner, and all it took was the gentle nudge of a well-placed legal argument to tip the scales. Now, here I was, the key in hand, the lake waiting patiently. I approached the gate, its lock a mere formality now. With a deliberate turn of the key, there was a satisfying click. The gate swung open, unceremonious yet profound in its simple motion. The barrier they had erected was now nothing more than a hollow gesture. As I walked towards the water, the grass soft beneath my feet, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The lake, with its timeless wisdom, seemed to nod in approval. It was mine again, in more ways than one, not just through ownership, but through the understanding that power doesn't always come from loud declarations or brash actions. Sometimes it lies in quiet resolve and the knowledge that right, when pursued with patience, will eventually prevail. The fence might stand for now, a monument to their folly, but its meaning had shifted. No longer a cage, but a testament to a battle won with grace and dignity. The HOA had tried to fence me out, but in the end, I had bought the key to their fence, and much more. I stood at the edge of the lake, where the water met land in a gentle embrace, the ripples lapping softly against the shore, a place of tranquility and reflection, my own haven, almost taken from me by the iron bars of the HOA's fence. But now, I held the key, literally and metaphorically. Karen, with her ironclad rules and rigid smile, thought she could bend the world to her will. She underestimated the quiet power of persistence. I think that's why she overplayed her hand, trying to lock me out of my own sanctuary. Her ambition was all sharp edges and hard angles, like the fence she so fiercely defended the day I bought that key, so innocuously tucked away in the hands of an old guard. I felt the scales tip in my favor. It was a small thing, just a piece of metal, really, but it was the end and the beginning all at once. With it, the world of the lake expanded back to its rightful dimensions. no longer confined by the narrow vision of one woman's authority. As I slipped the key into the padlock, the click was a symphony of victory. The gate swung open, creaking its resistance but yielding nonetheless. The air on the other side tasted different, freer. I stepped through, leaving the fence behind, a monument to Karen's failed dominion. This place, my lake, carried whispers of the past. It sang the songs of 1,000 sunsets, the symphony of dawns breaking across its mirrored surface. Karen never heard these songs. She was too busy orchestrating her own, but she never realized the power wasn't in ownership. It was in understanding. The community had watched, wary and silent. As the battle lines were drawn, most stayed neutral, unwilling to challenge the status quo. But now, with the fence open, their glances were curious, hesitant smiles breaking through clouds of doubt, like the first cracks of sunlight after a storm. As days passed, the lake became a hub once more. Children's laughter echoed as they skipped stones, and families spread blankets on its banks, reclaiming the space as theirs. The fence became an afterthought, a line that no longer divided but faded into the background of a larger picture. Karen, sidelined by her own hubris, watched from a distance, her kingdom reduced to a paper crown, her authority challenged not by force, but by the gentle insistence of community. She had built walls, but I had opened doors, and through those doors flowed the spirit she could never conquer. In the evenings, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I would linger by the water, watching the colors bleed together in a masterpiece of nature's making. The lake was a canvas, and each day we were given new brushes to paint the future. People started to greet me with nods of recognition, gratitude unspoken yet felt deeply. Karen's reign had been one of exclusion, but this was the quiet revolution of inclusion. The real story wasn't just about taking back what was mine, it was about giving back what was theirs. The lake, in its quiet, unassuming way, had always been the heart of our community. Karen tried to steal its heartbeat, but you can't cage a heart, not for long. It will find its rhythm, its pulse, wherever it is meant to be. So, as the days stretched into weeks, and the community found its voice once more, I realized the key I had bought was not just to a lock, but to a new beginning. The lake was free, and so were we.